Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to another presentation of the online ColdFusion Meetup. I'm Charlie Earhart, and I'll be your host for the next hour or so. And in this edition of the Meetup, being recorded on Thursday, December 15th, 2016 at noon U.S. Eastern Time, and is our 248th episode of the Meetup, we've got Giancarlo Gomez, who's going to give us his talk on Realtime with WebSockets. So thank you, Giancarlo, for coming on, and with that, I'll stop sharing. You can take control and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Let me quickly share my screen and bring it up. And my name is Giancarlo Gomez, and welcome to Realtime with WebSockets. A little quick introduction to myself. I'm a proud father of three. I've been doing web development since 1999. Shortly started my freelance career in 2001. Joined the South Florida ColdFusion user group and eventually became the co-manager. And I'm also the owner of Fuse Developments Inc. and Crosstracker Inc., which is where I really play with a lot of WebSockets. So, what is a WebSocket and why? Well, a WebSocket is a protocol that provides a full duplex communication channels over a single TCP connection. This allows for bidirectional and full duplex messaging between both sides. It has very little overhead, resulting in very little latency. This is one of the best descriptions that I've found on the internet, which I'll let you read later. But first, I want to show you, what can you do with WebSockets. So, blah, 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 show me what I can do with this, and I don't mean chat. I normally do these live, but I went this time and decided that I would do a video for everybody and kind of walk you through it of the different things that we can do with WebSockets. The first one, I call it the live form. Here, I created a form that I wanted two users to be working on the same form and be able to be notified in real time what each of them are doing. Like this, they don't overwrite each other's information, or they don't have the latest update. Things aren't sorted properly. So if you're looking at the screen, and some of these are sped up a little bit, just for the purpose of the presentation. You'll notice that on the top right-hand side and the left-hand side, as something happens, it notifies the other user if it was them or if it was somebody else. On the right-hand side, you'll see if the one on the left-hand side does it, it'll say it's done by JC, and on the left-hand side, it'll say it's by Maria. The second one is called the dashboard. If something happens, it knows. Here, I have a dashboard on the left-hand side that you can envision a store looking at, and on the right-hand side, I have a cart that I'm completing to check out. At that point, it is placed into the very first bucket of the dashboard. And as this order is being managed by people internally, it'll go ahead and change into different statuses in real time. This again is not being, the browser is not asking the server for a change or anything. It's actually just sitting there and waiting for a change to be told to it. So it's actually being pushed. At this point, we're actually done with the process, and you can see that order went from bucket to bucket. This one here is something I built for our staff and also for our developers. Sometimes when they want to test something, they want to work with real live data. So what we do is we're able to pull in the data from our production server and then kind of copy it over to our staging or development server. Now, this is a real long-running process, so I really speed up through this in the video. But what you can see on the left-hand side, I have like a console that's telling you what's going on, and the right-hand side, I have progress bars. So it's really better than just a spinning wheel just going over and over again. If you look at the bottom of the screen, right around here, you'll notice this thing called frames, and you'll see a lot of data coming in, and that's what's being pushed by the WebSocket to any connected browser for this view, specifically for this form. So you'll notice right down in the bottom, you'll see something that says channel name, and it says admin forms .sync. This is where I take advantage of ColdFusion's ability to create, and mostly with any WebSocket, being able to create like sub-channels on demand. So when we'll speak about how to set this up, you'll notice that I will set up channel names, which is a top channel, and from that point on, you can set sub-channels and children all by dot notation. So this one here, sync, and then it has a UUID, is something that I created that only you as the user, because this is your form, will have access to this channel. So it'll only live while you're up, while this process is going, and it'll kind of just shut down. Let me go ahead and go back to clicking. This one I call the whole enchilada. It's kind of putting everything together. Kind of here demoing how things work at Crosstracker. So what we can see here is 3 dashboards. The top one is called the whiteboard, right one is coach board, and the bottom one is the dashboard for a business owner. So what's happening here in real time is people are logging in either through their devices or through a kiosk, or a coach is actually logging them in. And what you'll notice is that the graph on the bottom screen here is actually getting updated live. The whiteboard is showing all the users logging in, and the coach board, which they have access to edit their results, is coming live. Now, to show you that this also happens, what I wanted to do is come in with my user on my mobile device and go ahead and log in. What you saw there is that this class was actually already pre.
Hey, Giancarlo, somehow we lost you about 30 seconds ago. As soon as you said, as you can see, and then boom, we lost you. So I see you're still giving the presentation, and I see you stop, but I'm saying I still see your presentation being shared, so obviously Connect hasn't crashed on your end, but somehow your mic got either muted in Connect or muted in the OS or disconnected from your computer. So you might want to type in and let us know what you think may be going on if you know yet. And these things happen, folks, so please stand by while we deal with this technical difficulty. And he's just left, so he might have restarted the Connect app. So I'll keep an eye on him coming back in and make him presenter as soon as he comes back in. He's also on a Mac, and there seems to be some issue with Connect in the Mac, and sometimes I've even seen it reboot people's Macs. Don't know why they can't get that sort of thing solved. Maybe they have, and this is a unique problem. But anyway, yep, we just made yeah, no problem. Okay, just go ahead and share your screen. And again, you were just about 30 seconds before you stopped.
I don't really think they've ever done more to fix it with the whole Flash issue.
Right.
It just happens.
That's a shame.
So I'm just going to stop right here, and everybody can see my screen, right? Let me bring up the chat so I know, because last time I didn't catch it. Okay.
Yeah, no problem. We see it.
What ended up happening here is I went ahead and I logged in through my device as myself, and well, not myself, the user I have, Adrian Harrison. And now I'm going to go ahead and enter a result. At this point, there's a new screen down at the bottom, which is called the stats board, where when people enter their results, it's updated in real time. So again, this is what you're seeing here is like this is the mobile device. This is the simulator. I'm going ahead. I'm entering in my data. I'm going to go ahead and submit. And you can see that all the screens got that data in real time. And then now with the coach board, you can envision a coach having this up on their iPad. They can also go ahead and enter in results, and all these screens are working together in real time. Again, there's no polling, there's no asking the server. It's just sitting there waiting, and as the server knows, it goes ahead and pushes out all this data to the users. And that's pretty much it for my examples. So that kind of gives you an idea of what you can do with WebSockets. Now the thing is, how can we do it, or how can we begin to do these things? And to get again, sorry. So the real world uses, as you saw, is dashboards. Auction sites you can use it for. I used it for an auction site when I first started messing around with WebSockets. It's called Funds for Causes. I've checked it lately, and it doesn't look like it's still the old code base or that it does that anymore. But it was pretty cool because it was a penny auction site. And then every item kind of was like its own object, and when people bid on it, we can send data in real time of where that bid was. You can use it for chat, which is if when you're learning WebSockets, that's the normal demo that you get, and it's people get tired of it, but it is one of those things that help you really understand how you get this real-time connectivity working. Push messaging, email notifications, you can use it for that. I mean, there's also other technologies that we can use for that, but WebSockets is good. Games, you can envision games, putting, updating in real time, positioning on the screen and letting everybody know who's connected, what's going on, and really you can use your imagination. Anything is possible. So to get a kind of an idea of how it works, just wanna, and I'm sure a lot of us are pretty well versed in this, but just getting the high overview of the HTTP architecture. It starts with a request, from a client to a server, and it comes back as a response, which is half duplex communication. You can think of it as the days when we used to play with a walkie-talkie, and of course none of us could talk at the same time. You actually had to wait till the other person finished to get a response. Browsers have come a long way to help it move along where we can create different connections and so on, but that's beyond this topic. Before WebSockets was available, or before we even knew how to use them, some of us used a technique called short polling, where what it is we basically create an AJAX request to the server and ask it for an update. So you basically ask the server, hey, is there an update? Server says no, comes back, and then you just keep asking that on an interval, whether it be every 5 seconds, every 10 seconds. You basically code what you want, but you're still asking the server every time for an update, and whatever processing needs to occur on the server, whether it's necessary or not. You can multiply the connections, and this can eventually become an issue because it has a lot of overhead. Each connection is actually setting cookies over and so on. The second method we used to use is long polling if your server allowed it, which is the same as the short polling, except now you put this a little bit more work on the server side. So you still create the first call from the client to the server, and then the server kind of holds that connection open. And it waits and it loops over itself and waits until there's an update or until the specified amount of time, like whether it can hold the connection for 30 seconds. At that point, it will return to the client and say, hey, there's no update, or here's an update, go ahead and start again. And then when the client will receive whether an update or no update, it then waits a little bit and then creates another call again. So again, but the client is keeping a connection open, and web servers weren't really built for this in the beginning. So again, it's a lot of overhead, limit on connections on your server depending on how you have it set up. So it could introduce a lot of problems in the long run. And here comes WebSockets. What WebSockets does, it does start off as an HTTP call, and then it's upgraded once it knows that both the client and the server can support this type of communication. At this point, it creates a bidirectional messaging, right? So now these messages can go in real time towards each other. It's normally known as a pub-sub pattern, right? Publish and subscribe. And this connection stays open until either side closes it. Normally, we want the client to be closing it. So, WebSockets and ColdFusion. This was introduced to ColdFusion in ColdFusion 10. It was pretty limited, but it was still great to start playing with it. You did have to work with it over a defined port because it's using an internal WebSocket server, and that defaults to 8575. If you needed to support browsers like IE9 or less, you did need a Flash fallback. So what it does is it works over Flash communication, and then all the code is there for it to actually work. That works over port 1243, and that is defined in the lib neo WebSocket XML. So these two things were important to know, because if you're working behind a firewall, you needed to open these these ports for your server, or if you weren't in charge of that and you needed to let an IT ops team know that they would need to update to open that for you, you'd go through that process. There's also a setting for setting the max data size, is how big the data can pass through. The default is 1024 kilobytes. I've never needed to do it bigger because I really use this just for like event notification, but you could use blobs and all that. And if you're using to pass images and so on, you might need to raise this value. And in ColdFusion 10, one of the limitations was that there was only a 100 connection limit on standard, and it became unlimited in enterprise. What would happen once you hit the 100 connection? I never really got a response of what would happen or really tested it, but it seems that it would either be put in a queue or the connections just nothing would happen. By the time I brought this up to the Adobe team, they were actually introducing ColdFusion 11, which opened up a lot of good things. Specifically, the connection limits were gone at standard level. They introduced proxy support, which was great because when you're behind a firewall, it's easier. When you're behind a firewall, you can create these proxies just like the proxy connector for your WebSocket for your web server, and it would work over the regular ports, either over 80 or 443 for SSL. Granted, there is some requirements for that we'll discuss later. And when you're dealing with SSL, this made it much easier to work with. SSL support also was introduced, which is great because at the time during ColdFusion 10, the only browser that would throw an error when you were trying to connect to a non-secure WebSocket over a secure page was actually IE. Now all browsers don't allow that. So back in the day when I first started, I was working with a secure site and I needed to connect to a secure WebSocket, and I didn't have that, and I had to find alternatives until it was made available. And then the only thing that's made Enterprise as of 11 is cluster support, which makes sense because you can only do clusters in Enterprise. So how do we enable WebSockets in ColdFusion? It's really 4 easy steps. Number 1, we enable it in the admin. Number 2, we add one line in our application CFC, and that line is actually this.ws channels, which is an array of structs, and each struct has a name and a CFC listener. The CFC listener is for more advanced features, but in its basic setup, this is all you need is the name of the channel that you want to support, and you can create different channels just by creating a new struct inside that array. Next, you use the CF WebSocket tag. This again is the most simplest implementation here. You have a name attribute, WS. This becomes the global JavaScript object, right? So if you are like in your web console, you can type WS and you'll actually see that whole JavaScript object and what you can do with it. Here you're telling it that when I receive an on message, I want you to run the parse message global function. So you do need to have a function that handles the messages as they come in. And you're telling it here that when you connect, you want it to automatically subscribe to the demo channel. So it's only, this tag is going to put all the code in there for you that makes the connection, and then it automatically subscribes to the channel. You could do it without it, and you can do it manually, but this is, again, the most simplest way to get it started. And then you write some JavaScript code and get creative. This is that parse message. What we'll be doing here is just getting the message and console logging it out so we can see exactly what's coming back from ColdFusion. Before we go into a demo, I want to go ahead and show you the screens and how they exist in the administrator. So in the ColdFusion 10 admin, it's very simple. It's you either enable or disable the WebSocket server. Here you have your port that you can define for the internal server, your max data size, and then your flash policy server. You need this if you need to support IE9 or lower. In ColdFusion 11, the settings are a little bit more verbose. If you're using the proxy, it's basically everything goes away, and you can't use some of these internal features, but you do get, real easy, it works really easy over port 80 and over port 43. You don't have to worry about, about firewall settings at all, because it'll work with your server. It'll actually proxy right through it. You won't be able to take advantage of the web clusters, because for that you do have to use the internal one. When you're in standard, the middle column shows you all the settings, which look pretty similar, but now there's a couple new ones. The SSL port, the key store. This is where you would put in your PKCS12 file or your Java key store that contains all your server certificates, and a key store password. Your max data size you still have there, and if you need to support Flash, you have the start Flash policy server. If you're an enterprise, you have all those options, as well as the bottom one to enable WebSocket Cluster. After you create your clusters, you would go into each one and make sure you enable this and make sure that multicast port is the same, because this is how they'll talk to each other. So now demo 1, 4 easy steps and a little bit more. Now we'll go into some live coding. So here, actually let me make my font a little bit bigger. I think by here it should work good for everybody. If not, let me know in the chat. I'm looking. Here we're going to have a WebSocket demo. We're going to have our WS channels demo. We have our index CFM file here that basically has just very minimal. Has a nav up here. Has a UL, an order list. I'm going to use as a console. I have a JavaScript file, and here's my CF WebSocket tag. So let me bring that up in the browser, and this is basically what it looks like. And go ahead and open up all these tools so you can see. All right. So first, we'll go into our network here, and I'll make this a little bit bigger so we can see. And you can see that we have a WebSocket call to CFusion. Here's the headers. So in this one, I'm using my local Apache, using the internal server. This is the path. It switches protocols, it upgrades, so now we have a good connection. At that point, we can see all our frames. This is what's happening when it connects, right? So we have a connection, it welcomes us, we go ahead and we get a response, and then we subscribe You can see all the data that's coming back. And now I have messages here. So before we go to the next, go back to, here we have a broadcast. Let me hold on 1 second. All right, so here we have a broadcast CFM, and what I'm using is an internal function, WS publish, and what this does is, this is you sending a message from the server. So the server is saying, okay, I want to publish to the demo, channel, and I want you to tell me that this is a message from the server and with the date format, or if I pass in a URL message. So to see that working live, I'm going to go ahead and clear this log, and I'm going to bring in that broadcast. Here's our broadcast window. I'm just going to go ahead and refresh this, and you see as I refresh, you'll notice that on the left hand side, that message is coming through. And let me go ahead and put a message. So here we go. This is easy. So that's pretty cool, right? It's working. It's working from the from the server. But we'd also like to see a client sending a message. So here I'm going to bring in Firefox real quick. And I'm going to bring up my console so I can work. And here's my WS object, and I'm going to use, I believe it was published. Last time I kind of forgot and I messed up. Let's just test it. And no, that one isn't. It's not published. Okay, this is where there it is. Let me clear the log again, sorry. So you'll notice from Firefox, I'm going to go ahead and, it wasn't that one, it was published. I'm going to go ahead and use ws.publish, and I'm saying, okay, pass it to the demo channel, and here's the message I want you to pass. And what's happening is the client on Firefox is publishing it to the server, and then the server is going ahead and passing it on to all connected clients. So this is from Firefox, and there we can see it there. And if I were to do it over here, console, there we go. This is from Chrome. So this is the most simplest setup of WebSockets and how easy it is to get it started in your local environment. So secure WebSockets, WSS. The easiest method to enable these, of course you need ColdFusion 11, is to use the proxy. But it relies on a couple things. Number one, you need to be on ISS 8 or higher, and you need the WebSocket protocol enabled. And if you're on Apache, you need to be on Apache 2.2 or greater, compiled with the worker module, not pre-fork. So the Apache npm worker. Using the built-in WebSocket server, you do need to do a few extra steps. You need to either create a Java key store or a PKCS12 file with your certificates in there. If you're using self-signed certificates, it's good to set this setting in your JVM settings, the /d, com, sun, net, and so on. That fixes the SSL error. That also actually helps if you're doing CF/HTTP calls that are failing. You can do that. You can add the certificate to the trusted to the internal Java key store, or I believe you can also set those settings in the bottom what it'll do is it won't care if it's a self-signed certificate, and it'll let it through. But again, that should only be for development, and you also need to trust the certificate using your browser. So here's what I was talking about. If you're on Apache and you use Apache CTL-V, you'll notice that what your server npm is. On mine is pre-fork, and I didn't really want to build it, so that's why I use the internal WebSocket server. On my Windows one, I am using I'm Windows 10, so I am using I go into Worldwide Web Services, Application Development Features, and you enable the WebSocket protocol. At that point, you basically just run the WS proxy config, which is found under CFusion bin. Kind of like your WS config that's found under runtime bin. What this does, you run it as your administrator, and then you create a connection, and it creates what you can see there. It creates an application called CFWS. Now, a couple of gotchas here. Sometimes if you went ahead and did the ColdFusion lockdown guide and you set a user to your website's application pool, this config will set that CFWS as the default application pool. You'll need to go in there and set it to the application pool that's proper for your website. Because what ends up happening is you get 500 errors, or it doesn't have access, because they need to be both the same application pool. So it's demo 2. What do you mean? It does not work. So let me go ahead and open this. We're going to go to our second demo. And here, I actually jumped the gun. Let me remove this. So you can see what happens here is because I'm trying to connect to a non-secure WebSocket, it's telling me that I can't. So you have to actually enter, if you're using the internal one, this new attribute of secure true. And what happens at that point is everything works. If we look at our network and we look at our headers, you'll notice that it goes to WSS. Again, everything is still the same. We can use the broadcast. Whoops, sorry. Go back to here. Do our broadcast, and we can see that we're getting that message from the server, just like the first one. A little gotcha here. Let's say you are working on you were working with a version that required you to use the internal one, but you were using SSL, and then all of a sudden you're able to use a proxy, and you go ahead and enable the proxy and then release it, and you start getting 500 errors and you don't know why. So for instance, here's a perfect example of that. As I bring it up, you'll notice that it was working before, and all of a sudden you're getting this WebSocket server is not running in secure mode, SSL, secure true, and you're like, but what do you mean? It is working because my SSL is working, everything is working fine, and the problem is that secure true. Once you have enabled the proxy, this will actually create an error because it's trying to use the internal one, or it's trying to check if the internal one is working. In the proxy, you don't need this. It'll automatically know to go ahead and use WSS. So again, if you enable the proxy, make sure you go everywhere and remove that secure true. You just remove it completely because it will cause you these type of headaches. Another screen that I didn't show you before would be the subscribers. So again, all this code is available on my repo. I'll share it at the end. But here, what I do is I go through every channel and can show you all the connections, to any of these demos. So if we go to clients, wait, subscribers, sorry. It'll show you all the clients that are actually connected. And you'll see if I actually jump off this one, actually there it goes, it's gone. So it's really live. As soon as one drops, it just goes away. And that is using WebSockets with secure with SSL. So WebSocket clusters. This one I won't give a demo because it basically takes a while to boot up ColdFusion now, and I actually used it in one of my first demos. And sometimes it takes a while. So we're just going to go with pictures here. So WebSocket clusters, again, let's imagine we have one instance here. We have client A and client B. They both connect, and they're both talking, publishing, subscribing. Everything's good. Then we bring up a second instance, and client C and D automatically start connecting to this server and talking. But the problem is that anything that client D and client C or instance B is pushing out, the other instance and clients don't get any updates. So here's where that WebSocket cluster port comes in handy, because now both instances talk to each other and say, hey, we're both part of the same application. You have these clients, I have these clients, please share information with me, and now everybody's connected. And if an instance goes down, they eventually switch over to the other instance. So we must use built-in WebSocket Server. At least, I mean, this is just my theory, right? Because I don't really think it works with the proxy. Haven't tried it, so if I'm wrong, please correct me, let me know. You need to create your instances in the Instance Manager. You define your clusters. You rebuild your connections. That's one important thing, right? Rebuild all your connections that uses this cluster you define. Then you go into each instance and you turn on the WebSocket clustering and you make sure that the port is the exact one, and then you just have fun testing. So real-world issues. These are things that I started noticing with my applications. You know, a lot of things happen. Network connections go down. You might need to, do an application reload because a lot of us are building with frameworks now. We're using a lot of singletons, and then we have a bug and we have to push it up. So in the middle of the day, we have to do a reinit or whatever you want to call it. And then also your server uptime. So what ends up happening is with these WebSockets is some of these real world issues can make your application seem broken when it really isn't. For instance, if your client has a dashboard and they're on a spotty Wi-Fi and their Wi-Fi goes down, but their customers coming in with their phone and their phone has perfect connection and they're doing something, they're looking at that dashboard and it's not getting updated live. Well, you're going to think it's broken, right? Think you're going into like a store that you're waiting for your turn and that screen's not saying that you're even checked in. You're going to complain. Your application is going to appear broken. And the problem is it's really not your fault. The network connection went down at some point. You had a bug. You had to upload it. You had to reinit. What ends up happening when you reinit, all your connections are closed. And that CF WebSocket, the WS object, has some functions to check if it's connected or if the connection is still open, and it'll tell you true. It'll tell you it still is, but it really isn't because it is no longer connected to the server or subscribed. So again, the only way it will resubscribe itself is if you actually walk up to the screen and refresh it. Another appearance that your application is not working. Same thing happens with server uptime. Server goes down and then comes back up, everything is gone. So here, I created a simple JavaScript utility called Advanced Socket. It easily integrates with CF WebSocket. I created some callbacks for connection drops that easily lets you add a notification for users when you have a reinit, when you have server downtime, when you have a network connection problems. And then it automatically reconnects to subscribe channels for you. So demo 3. Wait, they gave me something kind of broken. And what we'll do here is let me close all these guys out. Let's go to advanced. So here we're going to go into our third demo, and everything still looks the same. This is our regular demo page. Let me go ahead and just show you real quick what this script does before we go anywhere else. Our script here basically grabs the console and then it grabs, it adds an event listener here for the clear log, and then when we parse the message, it brings it in, creates a date, then turns it to a local date string time, and then we stringify that JSON object, we get it, and then we insert it into that element ID. That's how you're seeing everything kind of being pushed in there in a readable format, right? So this is all that it's doing. So again, here is our regular index.cfm, and then this is the advanced one with the advanced socket.js. So again, everything is still normal here. I have some extra functionality here that's available, but the one thing that it does, it works with your body, with the data tags. I'm sorry, the data attributes of your body tag, right? So here I'm saying I want you to subscribe to demo. I have a debug thing of true. The data do message, I want you to do parse message. Kind of everything seems the same. The online timer is set to 10 because what ends up happening, even though we're saving on polling, we still have to poll. We still need a heartbeat. It's the only way it works, right? At least at this moment. So you're saying, well, if I'm doing that, then why am I even using WebSocket? Well, because at this point, you're doing one poll to just check a heartbeat rather than asking every 5 seconds for updates that may require a lot of functionality. This might just be a simple CFM page that says, yes, I'm good, I'm still alive, right? So it's really quick. It's a lot less HTTP requests. The next one is called offline timer. This says, okay, if I go offline, now I don't want you to respect those 10 seconds. I want you to check if even faster until the server is back online. So again, now you're saying I want you to check every 2 seconds. A reconnect timer, again, some of us work with frameworks that are reinits, as much as we want them to be milliseconds, might actually take a couple seconds. So when you re-init, there's a key that's called, that gets called out to all the clients, and they go, okay, the application has re-init. Let me reload myself, or let me start to reconnect. But it's going to wait that specific amount of time, right, to make sure that the application has had enough time to re-init itself. And then the ping URL, this is the file that's actually looking for to create all these pings and all that, right, checking if I'm still alive or not. So let me bring that up real quick. So here is our demo, our basic demo, and advance. So again, has a lot less stuff here. You'll notice that it's saying it's connected here. Let me open this guy up on its own little window to the left, this guy to its right. Let me clear these logs. I'll create a new window that does the broadcast. And you can see that they both got the message, right? Everything is good, message is fine. And I'm going to go ahead and re-init this app. All right, so now both of them got this. You might have noticed here that I went to disconnected and then connected. And you see that it sent a force reconnect message, right? So now this guy knows that the application has reloaded. I'm going to go ahead and start sending messages again. And you can see that the right side is getting messages, but the left isn't. And if I go into my web development tools here, I go into my socket and I go into that WS and I say it's connected. It says true, right? It's connection open, I believe. Oops. So it's telling us true on this side, but it really isn't. So that's why I kind of say they kind of gave us something broken. They did, they didn't. The fact is that you need to manage this yourself, right? You need to actually go ahead and check and rebuild this thing, and that's what Advanced Socket does for you. And not only that, right? So it also works with the offline settings. So let me go here. Come on, 100. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to toggle my connection, and I'm going to go offline. And at this point, and you'll see here, this is all the debug stuff, so you can see what's happening. Right now, I went offline, right? I went offline, the server's not working, but it's not making any calls because it knows that our navigator is, the navigator online, it knows that it is currently offline, right? This means my cable got disconnected, my Wi-Fi went down, so why am I even going to ask? Well, now when your Wi-Fi comes up, or your cable's connected again, it goes ahead and makes sure that it came back on, and hey, I'm connected, that's great. And it was really quick because the server was still up. So now let's do something fun, right? Let's restart that server, and we'll do it right here. And let's bring this guy back online. All right, so everybody's working again. I'm going to go ahead and broadcast. You see that they're both getting the messages. And we are going to restart this server. Sorry. So what I'm doing right now is I'm bringing down this server, and then it's gonna, and then bring it back on. And you'll see here that it's checking the connection, it's pinging, and it knows now that it's disconnected because that server went down. And you can see that the service is not available, it's coming up. So now, we have to wait till the server to come up. The server's gonna restart itself, and it takes a little while, and we're back up. Server's back up, and of course it takes ColdFusion a little bit. It should come back online momentarily. Again, not doing anything to that. Still checking. It's pinging. And like I said, it takes a little while, and there we go, we're connected. And if I do another broadcast, as this restarts itself here, it's the first time it's calling it. Come on, buddy, there we go. There's our message from the server came in, and this guy doesn't get any messages anymore. And that is a quick introduction to Advanced WebSocket. So, all right, I think we are at 12:39. Okay, we're still good for time. So, so show me how easy it is to work with, right? Now we chat. Now we're going to do the chat demo. What we're going to do here is, let me close all these guys out. And the chat demo introduces a couple of new things. So we're going to go into our application. I'm going to bring this down a little bit. Hopefully everybody can still see. All right, here's our WebSocket chat. We have our WS channels. We have our name of our channel name of chat, and we have a new CFC listener, chat listener. This allows you to take actions on certain events, which we'll go through momentarily. We have our application start. I have some application variables here, just so I can see, so I can track, published messages or all that. This is, of course, this is all done for demo purposes for you to kind of play around with. Here's our on request start. It knows that if I ask for reload, I want you to go ahead and send chat force reconnect. That's how this is required, so that little advanced socket works. And here we have, this is what's weird, right? When you want to use authentication on your WebSockets, you would think it should go into the chat listener or the listener, but it really doesn't. You actually put it into your application file or whatever file you extend your application from. And it's called on.ws authenticate. It looks for a username, a password, and then, of course, whatever else you want. I pass a connection info that you'll see what it does. It's just a little bit of extra stuff that's on the advanced socket. You don't have to use it, but it's there. And I'm using real simple I'm using real simple authentication here. I'm not connecting to a database or anything. I'm just saying these are my users, and if it's one of these users, you're good. If not, sorry, get out, right? And then we're going to open up our chat listener, and our chat listener has a couple of functions, right? Number one, you have to extend it, that CFID WebSocket chat listener, and that file is pretty much open. You can open it up and read it, I believe. It's not like encrypted or anything. So we have allow subscribe, allow publish, before send message, after unsubscribe, and then return connected user, which is a private one. So allow subscribe, it says, it's checking to see if the user is authenticated. It's also checking option check just to be extra secure. All right, so I'm seeing if it's authenticated. I'm seeing if the subscriber info has a username, and then if the user has subscribed, I'm going to go ahead and tell everybody, hey, this user has joined the chat room, right? So this is what's happening when we allow somebody to subscribe. And then I go ahead and send a thread. I put this into a thread, and it calls return connected users. What this does, it's telling everybody, all the connected users, so it kind of updates the UI. And this is another little gotcha, especially when you're working with frameworks, or if you do an Ajax call. Within that Ajax call, you have a CF web, you have a WebSocket function that you're calling out. Always wrap it in a thread. For some reason, I can't really explain it. I'm not smart enough to, I guess. But what it'll do is it'll kind of break your request if you don't do that. I don't know if it resets the headers or the content. So what you want to do is put it into its own thread, let it go out, and it doesn't mess with yours. So again, any server-side stuff, always try to put into its own thread. And then it just returns true. Allow publish. This is what happens when somebody tries to publish a message. It's saying, okay, hey, is this user authenticated? It's going to either return true or false. And then that keeps people from, keeps people from trying to, get into your, trying to publish into your channels. So before publish, I'm doing a couple of things here. I'm going ahead and I'm updating my published messages. Again, this is just for you. There's probably better ways to do this. This is just for demo purposes. I'm preparing my message data. I'm putting my message in. I'm putting into its own struct. I'm putting the message into message, and then I'm putting the connection info, which is part of the actual user, into its own value, and then I'm returning that. Before send message. So here I'm packaging the data, and then before I send the message, I'm getting that and I'm splitting it up and I'm putting it into an HTML into a string that will return HTML. So what this is doing is actually publishing the HTML to everybody, right? So it's grabbing my message that I grabbed and it's wrapping it into this. I could have done this all in JavaScript, but here on this side, I wanted to already just wrap it already and just publish that HTML string. So then on the client side, I just kind of pushed that chat, into the chat window. After unsubscribe, if I were to leave, I want to make sure to tell everybody, hey, that this user has left a room. And again, I return my connected users. And my return connected users is basically looking at all my connected users and building my left-hand side. So of course, this doesn't make a lot of sense until you actually see the client. So here's our client. We're using advanced. We're using our advanced WebSocket, and we have our nav bar here that you'll see. It's our top bar actions. This tells us our notifications, and here's our message form. This is how we create a message. This div will have our users, and this is our login modal. So let's look at that app real quick. And let's see here. 1 second as I bring it up. Where's my chat? Here we go. So here is my chat application. Again, there's a lot of CSS going on here that's hiding stuff and everything. So I'm going to go ahead and try to log in as Greg, and you'll see that I did get an invalid username. That user is not allowed. Let me refresh all this so you can see everything down here. And I'm going to go ahead and log in as myself. So welcome to the room, JC, and I've connected. And you'll see here Pinellas Park, Florida. That's that connected info. That's all extra on Advanced WebSocket. It's actually using a reverse IP lookup API, and it's grabbing information about me. If I were to go here and say subscribers, they put in, yeah, there's all my client info. So here's where I am, all my information, and that I use it over here. So now let's open up another browser. And sorry, I haven't worked with making this more responsive. Here's Firefox. Let me go ahead and log in as Maria. And now we have Maria and JC. And see, Maria joined the room. Just say hello. So we say hello. We send our message. And here we see that that's mine. This is her. And now let's say I want to leave the room. And now it tells me that Maria has left the chat room. And that is your chat working. Again, all the code is there. You can see that, yeah, there's some code that I wrote, but it really was not that difficult to get working, and it gets you into the concept of how this can really work. And we can even do again, if we go ahead and say offline, it says we are disconnected. This is probably a bit too big, but you probably can use like a little red button or a little red circle or something that lets you know whether you're online or not. And again, now we are connected, and I think there we go, we are connected. Back to our presentation. So this is all great, right? And if you're on ColdFusion 10, cool. And if you need SSL and you're on ColdFusion 10, well, you have a problem. Or if you are not on ColdFusion at all, or you're on ColdFusion 9, WebSockets is still an option for you, right? You don't meet the requirements, so what can you do? There's a lot of there's a lot of open source projects. The one that I love the most is SocketIO. So I want to show you. I'm going to go real quick through it. Actually, and also Lucy yes, Philip, you're right. This week I saw a video. I kind of went through it quick. I haven't seen it yet, or I haven't tested how it is working with WebSockets on Lucy, but they do finally have an extension or plugin that you can use, and I will eventually be playing with that so I can add it to the presentation. But what we'll be working with is SocketIO. So SocketIO is built on Node.js, and if the code that I'm showing you, it doesn't make sense, I'll try to go through it real quick. So, but basically, this is me just creating a SocketIO server. There's a lot of Node modules I'm bringing in: Body Parser, Express, and SocketIO. If you've worked with Node, it makes sense to you. You have your package here. So my server, I'm starting on port 8080, and I said on my connect. Here's a simple WebSocket server. It's looking for connections. It's saying on connection. I want you to go ahead and parse the channels. Make sure to do the handshake, and then it'll excuse me. This is doing a console log to my actual terminal if I had it up and running. And then there's the message, right? So when we get a message, I want you to broadcast it to a certain channel. If the channel is passed, if not, I want you to emit it globally, right, to everybody. And then on disconnect, it just console logs my disconnect. We have our Body parser, this is used to parse a body out. So what I'm doing here is I created a REST point called publish, and this is what ColdFusion would use, right, as an HTTP post, and it will look for the body message and it'll set into as a message, and it'll go ahead and do the same thing. It'll emit to everybody. So this is our SocketIO server, and if I were to bring that. Let me bring up my SocketIO example. This is our SocketIO example, and you'll notice that this is just a simple index HTML file, right? There is no ColdFusion at all here. It has my SocketIO JS file that comes from the SocketIO server, and then some extra JS that I wrote myself here, right, that handles all the connect, disconnect, reconnect message. So this, you don't need advanced socket here, because once I started playing around with SocketIO, I realized that, oh my God, they kind of do the same thing. They already have it there built in for you. And most of the things that I had built, it's not that I did it before them or they did it before me. It's just, it was nice that when I started using it, I was like, oh, okay, I was on the right track, and it helped. So here is our client, and then here's my broadcast CFM. Sorry. So my broadcast CFM, it's going to create a new HTTP call to my SocketIO server. It's going to do a publish to port 8080, because that's what my SocketIO server is on, right? Port 8080. So we go to here. Oh, come on. And yeah, I don't have a REST point on it right now. So I mean, I don't have actually a view on it, so it won't show up. What if I do publish? It requires a post. That's right. So ignore that. What I'll do here is I'll do my broadcast now. And I misspelled it. And so starting that connection failure, and I think my SocketIO server is not up and running. All right, let me open that up. Sorry about that. That is right. Let me go to my SocketIO. Okay, here's let me start it. All right, so here, there we go. So now I do have my node server up and running, and you can see all my console log happening here. So I'm connected to demo and global. I'm going to go ahead and broadcast, and the broadcast was sent. Here's, I published to that ColdFusion SocketIO, and it published a call from the server. I can even do, so, yeah. So, and now you can see that even though I don't have the latest ColdFusion or whatever technology I'm on, I don't have WebSocket readily available, you can still use third-party open source solution like SocketIO to make it work. So here's an HTML client, here's a ColdFusion backend, and they're working hand in hand. And this could be a CFM client to it. This can be an index CFM, but it just doesn't have the CF WebSocket. You just kind of use all the stuff available to you from SocketIO. In another code base, you'll see that in one of my other repos, you'll see the Realtime with WebSockets. And what this does, this gives you a couple things. It gives you this console app. So what this console app does is the demo code that the Adobe team had there for a while, but I've gone ahead and updated it where, number one, it's a little bit more visually pleasing. But it'll look at the channels that you have in your application and make it easy for you to go ahead and play with and test some of this stuff out. So for instance, in this one, right, let me start my chat server here. Again, server, sorry. Start my chat app here. Let me see, JC. Oh, let me go ahead like this. So we have JC there, and I'm going to say, okay, I want to work with chat. I want to enter a name of Bill, and I'm going to subscribe. Bill has joined the chat room. So you can see here, I have all that stuff happening here. You can publish, there it is, and you have a console running here of what's happening. You can work with the invoke and publish functionalities. This is the only one that you'll have to update manually, but you can basically drag and drop this folder into your application and test all this stuff. Now I'm going to unsubscribe, and you can see that it works with the chat app, just as it should. Another thing that I did live stats. So again, when I was counting those published messages and all that, you'll see here that that will update. This is actually doing polling. This is not using WebSocket. I should upgrade it to WebSockets, but I haven't. So that one's checking like every few seconds for an update, and you can see I published message 23. And we should have a published message 24 soon. Once it polls again, there we go. So polls. We can clear a message. We can leave our room. And you can re-init the application. Everything starts again. You can see that when I re-init the application, everything is gone, right? You have access to all the code here as well, and that's all available in my repos, which I will share at the end of the presentation. So here's some helpful links. You don't have to copy any of this right now. You'll have this available in. I'll share this again. You can go to my GitHub, and you'll see that it's Realtime with WebSockets Demo code, Advanced Socket, and the ColdFusion CF WebSockets. That's the last one that I showed you that has everything in one. The demo code is the one that's just separate, the demos that I showed you today. A lot of other links that you can get from the PDF download. And again, my website is giancarlogomez.com. I try to blog as often as I can. I rarely do. It's kind of hard. Always busy. My email is giancarlo.gomez@gmail.com. You can follow me on Twitter as giancarlo.gomez. My GitHub is giancarlo.gomez, and my LinkedIn. You can see I'm pretty easy to find. So again, thank you all for coming. And now I'll be open for any questions. Let me look at the chat. Let me go ahead here.
I'm going to go ahead and switch it to the presentation or to this discussion mode. So folks, you can go ahead and start putting in your evaluations on the right. I believe that this first one had some votes in it already. Hey folks, let me just clear out this first one and do it again. I try to clear them out after every session, but I noticed as soon as I opened it, that first one had votes in it. So please everybody vote again on the first one if you didn't. And I'm sorry, Giancarlo, first thank you for the talk, and go ahead and there's a question for you.
Thank you. Yeah, Philip. So in this demo, I'm using the application scope just for demo purposes. Once you look at the code and you'll see how like the ping.cfm works, what it's doing, it's kind of looping through the IDs through the whole array of like your connections. That's probably not the best way. It might be better to work with a database. It might be again, it might be better to work with a database or with a NoSQL kind of like solution. Again, the possibilities are endless, but every time there is a WebSocket event in this presentation, I am using the application scope. And Charlie is sharing all my Charlie's sharing all my repos there, so that's good. And all the code base is there, the PDFs are there, so it really. And if you have any questions, you guys can just reach out to me. I always try to help out. Should we put our server-side stuff into a thread when doing an AJAX call? The only thing I would say you put into a thread is if within that AJAX call, you're doing a WebSocket call, like a WS publish or a WS, some of the other, so hold on, and now let me remember all my functionality. Any of the server-side WS functionality, WebSocket functionality, you should wrap in a thread. But if you're just doing an AJAX call and doing like regular work and then waiting for something to come back at the end, I wouldn't put it on a thread unless you don't need it for your response, right? That would be my answer to that.
Anybody else have any questions? Excuse me.
And I think everybody's good. I mean, thank you, everybody. Thank you. I don't want to mess up names, but Akalesh, thank you for saying that's awesome. And Fremont, I hope you have fun playing with it. I know I do. You're welcome, Phil. Thank you very much. Yes, the code for SocketIO is in the demo one here. Let me give that GitHub one. Okay, hold on 1 second. And it is in here. So Aklesh, it's in this repo, and it's under other demo files. You'll see the SocketIO and the SocketIO local.com. You're welcome. Have you heard of React.js? Yes, I have heard of it, Philip. Yeah, I've heard of React.js. It is big. It's big in the JavaScript world. I'm not gonna say I'm a fan of it or I'm not. I kind of love vanilla JavaScript and try to stay away as much as possible from frameworks lately. If you haven't seen like WebSocket JavaScript 30, that's free. I would recommend doing it. It's a lot of fun. Kind of opens your eyes to things you can do that we kind of forgot out of how pleasant it was to use jQuery. But there's a lot of power for us there. So React.js, a lot of people love it. I haven't played with it to really care, and I think when I've looked at my options, I kind of right now, if I would choose one, I'm going towards Vue.js. Jamal, any WebSockets and Lucy? This week there was a post from there about a new plugin. Let me see if I can see it. Brad made that post on Twitter. Let me see if I can find that link real quick. Now you can hit up Brad on the CF Slack. And it should come up. Brad Wood.
Remember, we can't see your screen.
No. I'm looking for it. I'm gonna go ahead and paste it once I see it. I want to bring it up. Come on. Here we go. There's a beta extension for WebSocket here, and here is a YouTube for it. There you go. So that video shows you how to use the demo. The plugin for WebSockets on Lucy. I haven't played with it myself yet, so I wouldn't be able to help until I actually go through that video and play with it.
By the way, notice there the session ratings. You can see that, right, Giancarlo? 85% of people said they would like to see another session from you. So if you've got another talk you'd like to do, let me know.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff I would love to talk about. I can talk about CSS and JavaScript and optimizing your web servers and all that. So I have a couple ideas, and when I do, I'll let you know. Some of them are like kind of away from ColdFusion, but in ColdFusion I've really stuck to.
Well, and I'll point out too that if you've got some talks you've done from the past, since you've not given one here before, you could give those again. That would be fine. Sometimes people think people only want to see new talks that have never been seen before, but a lot of times talks are given at present, at conferences that people don't attend, so they never see them. I've got several I've never given myself. I kick myself to realize that I've never done it myself. So, not never, but I've sometimes had some that I've never presented here. So,
well, thank you for all the positive feedback.
We see one more comment coming in from Jose, and after that, we'll stop the recording. Casey's got a question for you. And apologies for my voice. I'm just getting over a flu.
Oh, no problem.
He's typing a lot.
I do that. Okay. I remember React.js works by way of JavaScript rendering. It's always. Oh, and he's making a comment about React.js. Works by way of JavaScript running HTML always is one way, at least the way I've understood. Again, I'm not too versed on React or any of those things, and really just haven't jumped on what's the latest flavor of the week on those. Angular, Angular is great, and I haven't messed with Angular 2. But with Angular 1, the way I did it is I learned it when I worked on a hybrid app for it. And that's kind of the way I take it with some of those things, because, you never know if they're going to be around or if the job really requires it. Most of these things, I think if if you know JavaScript and you've learned before, you can teach yourself real quick. It's just learning the syntax, their their syntax or like their workflow, and then you're good and going in a couple of days. But yeah, that's it. All of them are good. They're all done by very smart people.
Okay, well, that seems to be it for the questions and the comments. I'm sure some will throw in some more thank yous as we hang up, but let me go ahead and stop the recording. Maybe somebody's waiting to ask a question with the recording not on, so I'll go ahead and stop the recording. Say again, thank you, Giancarlo, and I'll be getting the recording. Excuse me, the recording will be posted as soon as I save it. It'll be available there on that recordings.coldfusionmeetup.com, and throughout the next day or two, I'll get it up on YouTube and Vimeo. So with that, I'll say thanks, and until the next time, everybody.